The call came on a Wednesday morning. I was in the middle of reviewing a $4.7 million federal infrastructure contract renewal when my phone buzzed. The number was a Washington, D.C. area code I didn't immediately recognize. I set down my coffee, stepped away from my desk, and Miss Chen. The voice was professional, measured, government-trained. This is Special Agent David Reyes with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. I want to be transparent with you. Your father, Robert Chen, filed a report with our office 3 days ago flagging several of your financial accounts as potentially fraudulent. I said nothing for a moment. I looked out my office window at the city below. I see, I said. Before we proceed, Agent Reyes continued, his tone shifting slightly, I need to verify your identity against our federal contractor database. There was a brief pause. The sound of keys. Then a longer pause. Miss Chen, are you currently holding an active Level 3 federal security clearance under contract number GS47-2019 Chen? Yes, I said. Another pause. Longer this time. Miss Chen, I'm going to be direct with you. Your father is still on hold on our other line. He's been waiting for 20 minutes. I wanted to reach you first. He cleared his throat. Should we inform him of your federal contract clearance level and the nature of your accounts, or would you prefer to handle this privately? I sat down slowly in my chair. Give me until Friday, I said. I'll handle it. Of course, Agent Reyes said. And I could hear in his voice that he had seen this before, a family member certain they had uncovered something sinister who had accidentally pulled back the curtain on something much larger than they were prepared for. On the other line, my father was still waiting. He had no idea what he had just done. My name is Chen. I am 34 years old. I am the founder and CEO of Chen Tech Federal Solutions, a government technology consulting firm with $53 million in active federal contracts across infrastructure, cybersecurity, and data systems modernization. We employ 62 people. We have offices in Washington, D.C., Austin, and San Jose. My family believes I am a mid-level project coordinator at a small software company. This is not an accident. This is by design. I grew up in Sacramento, the middle child of 3. My older brother David went to USC on a partial scholarship and became a commercial real estate broker. My younger sister, Angela, studied marketing and married well. Her husband Kevin runs a regional automotive dealership group that does approximately $18 million in annual revenue. By the standards of our family, they were the successes. They owned things. They had titles. They had photos on the walls of their offices. I went to Cal State Sacramento on a full academic scholarship. I studied computer science. I graduated early, took a job in Sacramento's state government IT division at 22 and quietly began to understand something that most people my age were not thinking about yet. The federal government spends hundreds of billions of dollars every year on technology infrastructure, and the contractors who serve them operate almost entirely outside of public view. There is no leaderboard. There is no Forbes list of the top government IT contractors. The work is quiet. The money is very, very real. By 26, I had my level 2 security clearance and was consulting independently for 3 state agencies on legacy system migrations. By 28, I had incorporated. Chen Tech secured my first federal contract, a $3.1 million systems audit for a Department of Transportation regional office, and hired my first 4 employees. My family knew none of this. What they knew was that I drove a practical car, lived in a modest apartment in Sacramento rather than the suburbs where David and Angela had settled, and wore sensible clothes to Sunday dinners. What they knew was that when Kevin talked about the dealership's new $6 million inventory expansion, I nodded and asked polite questions. What they knew was that when Angela showed photographs of their new house, 5 bedrooms, a pool, a 3-car garage, I said it was beautiful and meant. What they did not know was that I owned my apartment building. I had purchased it 3 years earlier through a holding company, one of 4 real estate assets I held under LLCs that bore no trace of my name to a casual searcher. My personal accounts, the ones my father saw when he logged into the family's shared bank alert system, a remnant from when I was in college that I had never removed. myself from, showed normal, regular deposits that looked like a comfortable but unremarkable salary. They did not show the operating accounts of Chen Federal Solutions. They did not show the investment accounts. They did not show the $2.3 million in a private trust that I had established 2 years ago. My father had been watching the shared alerts for years. I know this because he mentioned it once, casually, at a dinner, the way people mention things they think are insignificant. I still get the alerts from your bank account, he said. Old habit. He laughed. I nodded and filed it away. I had never removed myself because it never seemed to matter. I was wrong about that. Chinteca's growth between 2019 and 2024 was not dramatic in the way startup stories are usually told. There was no single moment of breakthrough. There was no viral product launch, no venture capital feeding frenzy, no TechCrunch headline. There was just the quiet, disciplined accumulation of trust within government procurement systems. My first major contract came through a referral from a former colleague at the state IT division, a woman named Patricia Owens who had moved to the federal level and remembered the quality of my work. Patricia introduced me to her contracting officer at the Department of Transportation. The $3.1 million audit led to a follow-on engagement. The follow-on led to a full modernization contract. The modernization contract led to a security clearance upgrade and an introduction to a contracting officer at the Department of Homeland Security. By 2022, Chintech held contracts with 4 federal agencies. By 2023, 6. The revenue that year was $31 million. I hired carefully. I paid well above market. I built a team of people who understood that our work was invisible by design, not because we were hiding anything but because federal contracting operates in a world of procurement regulations, NDA requirements, and security protocols that simply do not permit the kind of public visibility that consumer tech companies enjoy. My employees knew what we were. My clients knew what we were. The public did not need to. My family certainly did not need to. I want to be clear about something. I was not hiding from my family out of shame or fear. I was hiding from them because I had watched very carefully what happened to people in my extended circle when their success became visible to people who felt entitled to it. I had watched a cousin's small business get slowly drained by family members who expected discounts, favors, loans, and partnerships. I had watched a friend's inheritance become the subject of a lawsuit filed by relatives she barely knew. I had watched what money did to family dynamics, and I had decided very deliberately that I would protect my work until it was large enough that no one could threaten it. Chintech was large enough. It had been large enough for some time. But habits are hard to break. And the Sunday dinners continued. And I continued to nod. While Kevin talked about the dealership and Angela talked about the house and David talked about his commission splits. And my father continued to watch the bank alerts. The Sunday dinner where it began was in October. Angela had made her roast chicken, which she did every third Sunday, and the table was set with the good dishes because Kevin's parents were visiting. There were 12 of us around the table. It was loud, the way our family dinners always were. I don't know exactly what triggered it. I think my father had been building toward it for I think he had been looking at the bank alerts and doing arithmetic that didn't add up to him. The deposits were consistent, comfortable but not extravagant, and somewhere in his mind a suspicion had been forming that the consistency itself was wrong. That no one's salary was that regular. That something didn't fit. May, he said during a lull in the conversation. His voice had that particular quality it got when he was about to say something he had rehearsed. I've been looking at your deposits. The table got slightly quieter. Those deposits aren't normal, he said. For someone in your position. He said the last 3 words with a particular emphasis that made my mother look at her plate. Someone should investigate. Robert, my mother started. I filed a report, he said. He was looking at me steadily. With the IRS. Last week. Wanted on record that I raised the concern. Angela made a small sound. Kevin looked at his father. David's wife, Sandra, stared at her chicken. I took a slow breath. Hey, I said. My father blinked. He had expected, I don't know what he had expected. Panic. Maybe. Tears. A confession of something. He had not expected one quiet word in a woman who continued eating her roast chicken without visible distress. Okay, he repeated. Okay, I said again. I reached for my water glass. My mother agreed it was overdue, nodding with the particular energy of someone who has been waiting to agree with something. My brother David said nothing. Angela looked at me with an expression I couldn't fully read, something between sympathy and relief that it wasn't her being discussed. I finished my dinner. I helped clear the table. I drove home. And I waited for the IRS to call. I did not panic. But I did prepare. The morning after Sunday dinner, I called my attorney James Whitfield, who has handled Chinteca's legal affairs since the company's founding. James is a federal contracts attorney with 30 years of experience. He has seen everything. When I explained the situation, he was quiet for a moment and then said with the dry humor that I had come to appreciate in him, "Your father filed an IRS report on a level 3 federal contractor. This is going to be an interesting week for him. I want to handle this carefully," I told him. "Of course," James said. "How carefully?" I thought about it. Carefully enough that he understands. Not carefully enough that there are no consequences. James understood exactly what I meant. He began preparing a packet, not for the IRS who needed no education about who I was, but for the family. A document. Package that told the complete story. Chinteca's incorporation papers. Federal contract summaries. The ones that were publicly accessible through procurement records. The real estate holding documents. The trust structure. Every piece of the architecture laid out in order in language that a non-attorney could understand. "This is going to be a significant moment for your family," James said when he sent me the draft. "Yes," I said. "It is." I also called my CFO Linda Torres and my head of federal relations Marcus Webb. Told them there might be some family noise in the next week, that it would resolve itself, and that they should proceed normally with the contract renewal on the DHS engagement. They both knew broadly that my family was unaware of the companies. They had been briefed on this when they joined. They were professionals. They said the right things. Then I called Agent Reyes back. "I'd like to come in," I told him. "In person. I want my father present." There was a pause. "That's an unusual request," he said. "I know," I said. "But it's the cleanest way to close this out." He agreed to Friday afternoon. He would call my father and invite him to come in to discuss the findings of the review, phrased in a way that would make my father believe the meeting was about me. It was, in a sense, just not in the way he expected. The IRS field office on J Street was a beige building with fluorescent lights and the particular stillness of government offices on Friday afternoons. I arrived at 1:45 for a 2 o'clock meeting. I wore a charcoal blazer, my company lanyard tucked into my bag rather than around my neck, and I carried James's document packet in a leather portfolio. My father arrived at 1:58. He was wearing a tie, which meant he had dressed for what he imagined this would be. An official proceeding. A moment of accountability. He took me in the waiting area and stopped walking. "May." His voice was careful. He couldn't tell yet what my presence meant. "What are you doing here?" "I was invited," I said. He processed this. He sat down 2 chairs away from me. We did not speak until the receptionist called us both back. Agent Reyes's office was small and orderly. He had the build and manner of someone who had spent 20 years in federal law enforcement. Unhurried, observant, impossible to read. He shook my hand first and held it a beat longer than protocol required, the way people do when they want to signal something without saying it. Then he shook my father's hand and gestured to 2 chairs across from his desk. "Mr. Chen," Agent Reyes began, opening a thin manila folder. "Thank you for coming in. As I mentioned on the phone, we completed our preliminary review of the accounts you flagged." My father leaned forward slightly. "Ready? I want to start by reading you the findings." Agent Reyes looked down at the folder. "The accounts in question belong to Ms. May Chen, your daughter, who is present with us today. The deposit patterns you identified as irregular are consistent with," he glanced up briefly, "salary and distribution payments from Chinteca Federal Solutions, LLC, a government technology consulting firm incorporated in 2018. My father blinked. Chen Tech Federal Solutions holds active contracts with 6 federal agencies. Agent Reyes continued, his voice absolutely level. Total contract value currently under active management is $53.2 million. Ms. Chen is the founder and sole equity holder. The folder down and folded his hands on his desk. She also holds a level 3 federal security clearance, which is why her accounts flagged in our system the moment your report was filed. The clearance requires us to notify her when federal inquiry is made about her financial activity. The room was very quiet. My father turned to look at me. His face had done something complicated. It had started to form a response and then stopped halfway through when the words wouldn't come. 53 million, he said. It was not a question. It was a man reading a number off a sign and trying to understand what currency it was in. Active contracts, I said. Annual revenue last year was $31 million. This year we're projecting $38 million. He stared at me. Agent Reyes sat back slightly, giving us the room. For how long? My father said. His voice was different now. The rehearsed quality was completely gone. I incorporated in 2018, I said. First federal contract in 2019. 5 years. He said it slowly, doing the arithmetic again, the same arithmetic he had been doing when he watched the bank alerts, but arriving now at a completely different 6, I said. This past March was our 6th year. I opened my portfolio and placed James's document packet on Agent Reyes's desk. I've prepared a summary for the family. Contract overviews, corporate structure, real estate holdings, trust documentation. Everything. I looked at my father. I thought it was time. He didn't reach for the documents. He was looking at me with an expression I had never seen on his face before, not in 34 years of being his daughter. It was not pride. It was not apology. It was something rawer than either of those things. It was the look of a man who had been absolutely certain he understood a situation and had discovered, in the span of 4 minutes, that he had understood nothing. The apartment, he said. You've been renting. I own the building, I said. I purchased it in 2021. Through a holding company. He closed his eyes briefly. The car. I drive a practical car because I prefer a practical car, I said. Not unkindly, but clearly. Agent Reyes stood, which was his way of indicating that the official portion of the meeting was complete. He extended his hand to my father. Mr. Chen, the report has been formally closed. No further action will be taken. He paused. I'd recommend keeping family financial discussions within the family going forward. My father shook his hand. He was on autopilot now. We walked out into the fluorescent hallway together. At the elevator he stopped. Stopped beside him. May, he said. I waited. Why didn't you? He stopped. Started again. Why did you let us think? I didn't let you think anything, I said gently but precisely. You made assumptions. Allowed them to stand because I was building something and I needed to build it. Without interference. I pressed the elevator button. You watched my bank account for. Here's that. You thought you were watching everything. You weren't watching anything. The elevator opened. I stepped in. The document packet is yours, I said. Take your time with it. I'll answer questions. When you're ready. The doors closed. The document packet reached the family by Saturday evening. I know this because Angela called me at 7:14 p.m. She was not crying, but her voice had the tightened quality of someone who had been crying earlier and had gathered themselves to make a call they felt they had to make. You own your building, she said. Yes. And you have contracts with the government. Real contracts. Yes. A long pause. Kevin looked up Chen Tech. There are procurement records. Federal register entries. Her voice shifted. May, there's a Department of Homeland Security contract listed. There are 2 actually, I said. The second one renewed in August. She didn't say anything for a moment. Why didn't you tell us? She asked. And I want to be fair to Angela. There was no accusation in her voice. It It was a genuine question asked by someone who was genuinely trying to understand. Because I wasn't sure for a long time that it would be received well, I said. And then, it became a habit. And then Dad filed an IRS report. I let that sit. So now you know. David called Sunday morning. He was characteristically direct. I looked up the public contract filings, he said. You've been doing this for 6 years and none of us knew. It was not a question. It was an inventory. Yes, I said. You could have told me, he said. Maybe, I said. But I didn't. My mother called Sunday afternoon. She cried. Not out of guilt exactly, or not only guilt. She cried in the way people cry when they realize they have been given a version of a story that was incomplete for a very long time, and they are mourning something they can't quite name. I let her cry. I told her I was fine. I told her I had always been fine. My father did not call. He came in person Monday evening unannounced. I was in my apartment when the intercom buzzed. I let him up. He stood in my living room, which he had been in before, which he had always believed was a rental, and looked around it with different eyes. Nice place, he said finally. Thank you, I said. I bought it for $1.1 million. It's worth about $1.6 million now. He sat down on the couch. I brought him tea. We sat in silence for a moment. I owe you an apology, he said. Yes, I said. You do. He gave it. It was not a perfect apology. It was a father's apology, effortful and slightly defensive and genuinely meant in ways that the words didn't quite capture. I accepted it. In the spirit it was offered. I was trying to protect you, he said. I know, I said. But I didn't need protecting. I needed space. He nodded slowly. He looked at his tea. The report, he said. With the IRS. Has been closed, I said. No consequences. Agent Reyes was professional. I'm sorry for that, he said. Specifically. I know, I said again. 6 weeks after the meeting in the IRS field office, I had dinner with my father. Just the two of us at a restaurant I chose. A quiet Italian place near my office that I had been going to for years. The owner knew me. The staff knew me. When we walked in, the host said, Miss Chen, your usual table? And my father watched this happen with the particular expression of a person recalibrating. We ate well. We talked about Chen Tech. He asked questions, real ones, the kind that showed he had actually read the document packet. He asked about the federal procurement process. He asked about my team. He asked about the security clearance and what it meant in practical terms. He was not performing interest. He was genuinely curious in the way he had always been genuinely curious about David's real estate deals and Kevin's dealership. He had just never thought to be curious about mine. I answered his questions. I told him about Patricia Owens and the first contract. Told him about the year we had 3 contracts simultaneously and I was sleeping 5 hours a night and eating takeout every meal. I told him about the moment we crossed $10 million in revenue and I sat in my car in the parking garage of our DC office and cried. Because I had not allowed myself to feel it in the moment of doing it. He listened. He did not interrupt. Over dessert he said, I didn't know you were carrying all of that. You didn't ask, I said. Not cruelly. Factually. No, he said. I didn't. The Chen Tech DHS contract renewed at $8.3 million in November. Our largest single contract to date. Marcus sent me a bottle of champagne. Linda sent a note that made me laugh. I told no one in my family until Christmas when I mentioned it in passing over dinner, the same way David mentioned his commission splits and Angela mentioned the house renovations. My father looked up from his plate. That's the Department of Homeland Security contract? He asked. Yes, I said. $8.3 million, he said. Yes. He nodded slowly. Picked up his fork. Took a bite. Good work, he said. 2 words. No fanfare. No drama. Just a father finally saying the right thing. It was enough. I had not built Chen Tech Federal Solutions to earn those 2 words. I had built it because I was good at the work and the work mattered and I had seen an opportunity and taken it with both hands. I had kept it private because privacy had been the right strategy, and it had remained the right strategy until the moment it wasn't. But those two words, arriving 6 years late, landed in me somewhere quiet and real. I smiled at my chicken. Chen, founder and CEO, $53 million in active federal contracts, level 3 federal. Security clearance, owner of 4 properties and a private trust. Also, a daughter who had always known, underneath the years of invisibility, that the work would speak for itself. It had. It always does.